And I like Ten Hag. I really do. That's mostly the pain as I face United. This is their worst run right now in the Premier League era. These are Louis van Gaal at his worst numbers. But we're really watching the potential for another gentleman starting to drown in that darkness of that fog of issues.
From the Men in Blazers studios in the crap part of Bedford and from the crap part of West Hollywood also, it's the Men in Blazers video podcast presented by the GFOPs at Camarena, the most awarded tequila.
Oh, and we back like the New York Giants. They've a wet and windy fall is upon us. Lord, I love this season. I am in my element, but how are you doing, David?
It's not wet and windy in West Hollywood, I can tell you that, Rog. West Hollywood, more of a Davo town than a Rog town, I think we can safely say. I'm doing well.
Oh, that is for sure. Lot of football, Davo, to break down. Much of it, gotta be honest, fairly turgid.
Yeah.
But turgid we must. Let's get right into it, baby.
Yes, post-international break football, Rog. But before we get to that, a quick shout out for everything happening at Men in Blazers World Headquarters this week. And there's one quite large thing that happened this morning. You know how we said football news was happening so thick and fast that, you know what, wouldn't it be nice if someone started a daily pod to keep up with all of that news? You know how we joked a person would have to be crazy to do it?
Just joking.
Well, you've only gone and done it, Rog, and found someone crazy enough to do it with you. Men in Blazers Early Kickoff launched this morning on its very own pod feed. I listened. I loved it. Congratulations both on the pod and the fact that you're still standing and not just crying in the fetal position or asleep on your feet.
Who says that I am not? As a fan of Everton Football Club and the Chicago Bears, I've got to say, anything miserable in my life is actually an incredible upgrade on my sporting fandom. And this whole project, well, it's twofold, really. First is, I've got to be honest, being overwhelmed by information flow in this social media age of football. I mean, it feels like football do not sleep, and it's a problem. It's a problem. Even I feel totally bloody overwhelmed at all times by just stories pouring in from everywhere. And I try and solve it myself. I get up at 5 o'clock every morning. I'm like a monk for football. And I sift through. God, wouldn't that be lovely to be a member of a monastery where you just football in a vow of silence? It'd be amazing.
Does this mean this is something else you're doing, Rog? Because every time you say something like that, we end up launching it.
A religious
From Men in
order.
Blazers
I do love
World
that.
Headquarters, a monastery. I love it.
Who wouldn't want to be a football monk with me and James Milner? We're probably the only two people that would sign up for that life. God, it would be like the new football hotel if we set up a football monastery. I'd love to be a football monk.
We've already got the haircuts. We can go right into it. We just need the robes.
That would be... Oh, come everyone, do penance in the football monastery. But I sit there every bloody morning with a cup of coffee, pot of coffee, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I sift through every single from like the quality through the tabloid English, British sports back page. And it takes me about an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 to get to speed or feel like I've got a basic grip on what happened overnight. And even as I do it, Dave, I'm going to be honest, I am aware that normal people can't do that, right?
Yeah. And that you are not normal by
Yes,
extension.
both things.
Yeah.
Footballing monk. There's not don't denormalize footballing monk life, Davo. But we create this
Monk life.
pod.
There's a mug coming.
Hashtag monk life. We created this podcast. It's a micro pod. It's going to last about 10 minutes a day. It will drop every single morning at 6 a.m. Eastern time, fresh from London, from Putney. Your neck of the woods, Davo, is where it's distributed from. So essentially, in the time it takes you to shower, you can catch up on everything that's happened in the football world overnight. The big games, the managerial firings, the transfer rumours, the dodgy, corrupt American investment houses trying to buy Everton Football Club, and just catch up easily, intelligently, entertainingly, I hope, and incredibly accessibly. And I'm really happy. The other part of it is we now have Men in Blazers studio capacity in England. We kicked the English out in 1773, and now we're reverse invading, David.
Oh, one pod at a time. One micro pod at a time. I love it.
Micro pod. I love that. It feels like some kind of underwear garment. I am bloody proud of this product and all that is to come from our English studios. There's nothing like word of mouth. I do want to say this. And as you start microdosing MIB Network pods now, please take a minute, spread word to all your football curious friends and family about Early Kickoff. It's on its own pod feed.
Yeah,
That's the detail.
Pod Discovery, Rog.
Yeah,
It's
Pod
difficult.
Discovery. Didn't
Very
you write the
difficult.
book on Pod Discovery?
It's very difficult to discover new pods. It's one of the things
It's very
hurting the
difficult.
business. So it is on its own feed. I subscribed this morning to the new feed. You can listen to this daily, Rog, not just once a week at the end of the weekend, daily by going and searching Men in Blazers Early Kickoff, subscribing to that podcast feed. Subscribe, rate, listen, review. It all helps more than you can imagine, Rog. If that's not a reason for a toast, I don't know what is.
Oh, I thought you'd never ask, baby. I do raise this to Mr. Sammy James, the man with two first names, who is the face of the pod at launch. Dave, you loved the fact that we hired Sammy James, didn't you?
Yeah, Sammy, my high school nickname. James, my mother's maiden name. My daughter's middle name. Sam James could have been me in another life. I love it. Living in Putney.
That's all he needed to say in the pod interview. He just dropped both pieces of knowledge. I said, great. You're hired, son.
Excellent.
Why did they call you Sammy in school?
Because Sammy Davis Jr. Yeah.
I see.
It's because of my dance moves.
You got a pair of pipes, baby. I want to raise my third Bud Light of the day to Wrexham. Mighty Wrexham, who've had some week. They're pretty well the only thing in football, in sports, honestly, in this moment I actually care about that is on the ups. And I don't just mean the debut of season 2 of Welcome to Wrexham, the global juggernaut that is making the world's biggest tiny little club keep rolling. And they are rolling after a bumpy start to league life in which they could not stop leaking goals in League 2. But on Saturday, the Red Dragons moved into the top 4 after 3 wins on the bounce. They clipped Grimsby 3-0 thanks to strikes from Ollie Palmer. What a human being. Will Boyle and the indomitable Elliot Lee. I'd love to get Ollie Palmer on this podcast. He's a fascinating bloke. Plus, heartwarmingly, a first start of the season for mighty Paul Mullin, who's bounced back from a collapsed lung in pre-season. I will say the addition of Stephen Fletcher looks like he's going to burn down everything he touches when he comes on. Augurs incredibly well. I've actually subscribed to iFollow as if we needed another streaming service so that I do not miss a single Wrexham kick this season. And Godspeed to our mate Tommy Cheese and all the OG Wrexham fans. Wishing them joy. Looking forward to a League One clash against Everton Football Club in about 2 seasons' time.
Yeah, it could happen, Rog, but it also could not as we go to the football.
More could than couldn't, though, right?
No, I think it's right on the line. It's right on the edge, Rog. This is what's going to make observing Everton this season just so thrilling.
The only thing that's going to stop it is if bloody Wrexham get promoted twice in 2 seasons. Is that what you're saying?
No. Everton are in a relegation battle. We're only 5 games into the season, but it's a battle, Rog. It's not. There's no white flag being waved by anybody but you at this point. Everton 0, Arsenal 1. New place in the rundown. We don't usually kick off with the Toffees, but it is the same old result for the Toffees, Rog. That Scouse footballing Hotel Goodison Park gets a visit from Arsenal, a team Everton have delighted in refusing turned down service to in recent years. But it's the undefeated Gunners who emerge victorious here. The difference, a fantastic second half first-time strike from that Belgian Pete Davidson, Leandro Trossard. And that was pretty much that as Arsenal make it 4 wins from 5 games. And Mikel Arteta's smile looked as glued on as his hair after the game. Lego hair, Rog. The mood far darker at Everton, and not just because they've taken 1 point in 5. Some massive news even before this game about the club's future.
Oh, Everton, my beautiful broken club. They are, I've realised, to football, whatever that pizza Lionel Messi posted this weekend on his Insta story is to real pizza. First up, big picture. Let's dive into the rumoured takeover. Listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me catch you up for a moment on this dark news. Current joke owner, Farhad Moshiri, announced on Friday that he's finally going to exit stage left, which, yes, is a day that almost every mildly sane Everton fan has dreamt of, but not like this. Not like this, Farhad. Farhad, essentially, if you don't know who he is, he's an Iranian English, I think an oilman originally, but it was his partner in the oil business. Essentially, he was a frontman for oligarch Alisher Usmanov, with whom Everton had to suddenly sever all ties after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when he was immediately sanctioned. Mashiri has no real money. His 7-year reign of folly has been ruinous. He announced Friday he wanted to sell his entire stakeholding to whom? To the American investment firm 777 Partners. We'll talk about them. Mashiri claimed the Miami-based firm had the money to complete both the build of our new 52,000 plus capacity stadium currently under construction on Liverpool's waterfront. What a folly. And also to buy the club. To be clear, the deal still has to be signed off by the Premier League and the Football Association. So announcing it doesn't mean there's not the same as saying it's happened. They have to have a fit and proper test. Let's just say 777 Partners has been no stranger to controversy since being founded by a gentleman we'll talk about, Josh Wander. There's allegations of fraud, illegal non-payment of bills. I mean, the company denies all of them. I will,
and these were just from his mates who texted us both overnight on the Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I was going to say, by the way, Wander also pleaded no contest to cocaine charges in 2008. Let's just say, I have had, over the past 48 hours, some people, many of whom I consider to be the worst people I know in the world, the worst, texting me to say that 777 are the worst people in the world. Your response when we chatted about this on Friday, you said, oh, Todd Burley must be overjoyed with this news.
Yeah, and many people who describe themselves as really good mates with Josh Wander texted me and said, "I really don't know how he's doing this. I don't know where he's finding the money," which was part of it.
I got this. I got so much of that. We got many employees or former employees, people claiming to be former employees, getting into our DMs, just telling us. I mean, one horror story after another about this. But what do you make of it, Dave? I mean, I talked about it in a YouTube on Friday. But it's an agony because Everton fans have been so unbelievably desperate to be free of Mashiri, who spent the last 7 years essentially doing the equivalent of taking a pile of cash, a huge pile of cash, nearly $1 billion, essentially taking the lid off a garbage can, putting the money in there, setting it on fire, and putting the lid back on. I mean, that's what Yannick Bolasie, Yank Toast, and Davy Klassen were, Davo. But these guys, I mean, what do you know? How do you understand it? What words do you have to say to me and all Everton fans in this moment of darkness? Because we know people who went to university with them in Florida texting us to be like, oh my God, those guys that everybody knew. Yeah, there's one of these guys in every class, in every university. This is these guys. How are they going to get into the Premier League prestige halls of power?
Well, I'll give you the negative, then I'll try and give you something that won't sound like a positive, but it is a positive. The negative is that, if these guys do take over the team, they're going to do it with a lot of debt. And really what you don't want, do you want your team taken over by people with a lot of money that they're willing to spend insanely, rather than...
Welcome. By the way, if any of you are listening saying, hey, I want to do the insane spending thing, meninblazers@gmail.com. Go on, David.
Well, look, the headline in Wall Street Journal this weekend was Goldman Sachs advising their super wealthy clients that what they needed to do is invest in sports teams. There are a lot of other people
beckoning
out there
those people like I'm landing a plane at LaGuardia.
In sports teams, but you want someone who's not going to do it. I mean, all money is sort of debt because even if you're taking somebody else's investment, you're in debt to them. But you really want people taking over the money who can do it without a huge amount of debt, because the last thing Everton need is more debt around that neck, more anvil around that neck. The positive is the deal, it seems, that Farhad Mashiri was willing to take to sell the team that didn't require really paying him any money, at least not up front. I think he's so desperate to get out because the losses are killing him at this point that he was willing to really get out just in order to have his debt refused and to have some future stake in if the club turns to profit later. And I think that's the positive, is that you're going to be able to get rid of
You say we should start a GoFundMe. Remember the early days of this podcast? Someone tweeted us over the weekend. I remember when essentially the early days of the Men in Blaze podcast, the podcast was pretty much an infomercial for a GoFundMe so that we could all buy it. If every American fan of Everton and every English fan just gave $6, I think we could buy the club together.
I honestly would rather start a monastery.
I'm already on that. I've sent out emails during the first 5 minutes of this podcast. I'm trying to get sanctioned by the church. Is that the right word? I'm trying to get official status from the church. If any of you, I know we have a lot of religious leaders who listen to this podcast. Can you call me?
Yeah, that might be
Father Andrew O'Connor and the old school GFOP. Hook us up. We want to start this monastery.
Yeah.
But go on. Shall I start the GoFundMe? Is that, or you're telling me don't start the GoFundMe?
Anyway, so the only positive is that Mashiri seems willing to sell the club without him making any egregious sums of money, which would make Everton fans puke, I would imagine. So that's the only positive. But yeah, this is not unfortunately, Everton aren't attracting sovereign wealth. They're not attracting the leading hedge funds and private equity companies.
We can't even find a small unknown human rights abuser to show any interest in us. Surely there's got to be not even an unknown one, David.
Yeah. No, they need to work harder on the international pages to find one of those. But it's a fairly difficult situation. It's a fairly difficult situation.
Well, you've hinted at the darkness here. I mean, there is a Premier League fit and proper test, which has been a bit of a joke. It's been, do you have the money? Yes, no in the past, but they've strengthened it reportedly back in March. And will they pass this? It's not clear to anyone that 777 actually have the money. Which is said to be over 500 million. I think 685 million was a number that many of the papers conjured over the weekend. They do own other clubs too, and this is the bit of the tell for them. They own, their specialty is to pick clubs, once grand clubs in many cases, that have fallen onto just Filene's bargain basement levels and prey upon them. Brazil's Vasco da Gama, Genoa. In Italy, with whom, by the way, they have such little money to give Genoa, Davo. They've asked fans to fund a bond so that they can build a training ground. Not great sounding that. Hertha Berlin relegated under their ownership. So many of their teams have just either been relegated or gone into decline with the 777 golden touch. Hertha Berlin fans this weekend hold protest banners around the stadium mocking 777's notion. 777 gave an interview to the Financial Times, Josh Wander. Josh Wander, if you've not seen him, essentially, he looks a bit like Kendall Roy. Kendall Roy at his low point in Succession, the way he wanders around, which does his look undermines my confidence from roughly by about 110%. But he gave an interview to the FT where he said, football's about to enter a period of hyper-globalization and hyper-commercialization. Only he's noticed that, Dave. He's ahead of the game. And he talked about how football clubs, with their loyalty, essentially, if you own a team, you can turn around and get the fans of that team to buy, for instance, Everton insurance and Everton banking, which is just a hilarious notion. And the Hertha Berlin fan said, insurance, our investments are passion and independence, Josh Wander. But this is essentially, David, when I think that this man is sniffing around our club, we are already dead, right? This is our carcass he's sniffing around, and all that's left is for buzzards to feast upon our bones.
I don't think it's quite that bad, Rog, because Everton still is the most tremendous brand. He's right about that, and the fans, as the fan is right, who responded, it is about passion, it's about loyalty, it's about this phenomenal tradition and phenomenal history. They do need to, if it looks this season as though they are in more than a relegation battle, if it looks like they are going to go down, it will be really tough. They need to get a few results and show themselves that they're in the fight. And I think they'll attract more money. I think they'll attract some smart money.
The panic is, though, Dave, I'll be candid, a lot of smart money over the past 12 months, because there's been a lot of American sports investors, Lord, a lot, who have sniffed around Everton's books. And speaking to a couple of them, they've told me that Everton's accounts are so allegedly toxic, I'd say publicly, that no one in their right mind would touch them for fear of the reputational damage that they've been inheriting. What Mashiri's done to the club as a steward is essentially destroy it. I'm coming to realize I am cheering, and I mean this not hyperbolically. I say this with great pain, to be candid, as a gentleman that is a third generation Everton fan. My dad, a blue, my children, all of them blue. So many of you, felt great moments with this club, with you multi-generationally. But we're turning into football's greatest casualties, just of spending wildly, headlessly, trying to catch up. I do fear we are about to pay a terrible, terrible price for it, especially with October's financial fair play hearing, which is coming up, which could be just an absolutely brutal backbreaker. This once proud club, this vessel of joy and meaning, local connection, global connection. It's really a cautionary tale.
What that means, Roger, is you're praying for a transfer ban, not for a points deduction, essentially, in what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the good outcome is here. I found myself longing for the good old days when owners swept in to buy teams just for old, good old sports washing purposes. Maybe yearn for good, honest human rights abusers, David.
Yeah, no, it is complicated. But remember, Rog, no one in the Premier League, no one in international football wants to see Everton go out of business. That would be, or not go out of business. They're not going to go out of business, but to go into bankruptcy and to drop down 2 leagues. Nobody wants to see it. That's not because, do you know what? So go Everton, so go, half the other clubs in the Premier League. It's a very dangerous thing. Along with Pro Rel, this is the danger that you have with it. So no one wants to see them go out of business. So I don't think it's going to be that dark. I know it's so tough to remain optimistic at these times, but
it is.
Mike Positive Davo will find a way. I don't think they're going to go down.
I found myself flipping between God, I can't stand these owners, then being like, you know what? Good on them. At least they're honest. 777, Davo. At least they're honest about what they want to do with the club. That they want to treat it like crap. The owners who turn their clubs in, desire to turn their clubs into like modern media entertainment platforms. At least we're being honest that they want to turn it into a platform for financial misdemeanors and money laundering. And that's why we watch football, right, Dave?
So you can fly home on Everton Airlines and get in your Everton rental car and get your Everton insurance and go to the Everton pub.
And the Everton brothel or whatever they've got schemed up for us. It's just going to be just if that's the future, I can't wait for it. I might even leave my footballing monastery to dabble a little bit. I read a lot of philosophy late night over the weekend because I have been in all candor in some effing agony over this. I read some Wittgenstein, the Austrian philosopher, and he wrote something that I do believe all Everton fans. What? Because he's depressing, and I just found proof that it's always depressing. It's not just the now that's depressing, but like everywhere always was depressing. And somehow I find that very validating. But he wrote this, Dave. I don't know why we're here, but I'm pretty sure that it's not in order to enjoy ourselves. And that is good preface to pivot into the football, the actual football, Dave. Everton, Arsenal, the Invincibles, yet to win against Arsenal, yet to lose. My second son, Bear, turned to me before kickoff. He said, I love these games. I said, what do you mean? He goes, the ones we're not meant to win because it doesn't hurt as much when we get battered. And then I was like, but we've won. We got 4 wins and 1 draw against these at Goodison Park. Remember last year, son? Was it just 7 months since Sean Dyche came in and we won 1-0 and it was magnificent? He's like, Dad, you're on one. And and the whistle blew. And I was honestly so nervous. I thought the final score of this one would be Everton 0, Arsenal 7-7-7, and Shimon Neal back for Everton. But the big news, and I'm fascinated to hear what you thought of this, Dave. Arteta selecting newcomer goalkeeper David Raya ahead of really Aaron Ramsdale, one of the faces of this team. Tight-lipped Arteta about the reason why. Is it a permanent thing? Is it just a one-off? What he said was, I want 2 players challenging for every position. And he said there were at least 2 unnamed occasions during the team's title challenge where he wished he'd had the confidence to do this. Matty Turner, you could have been a contender. But Davo, rotating your goalkeepers is a dangerous game, right? It's not like any other position in football. This is not the NHL where you kind of yank goaltenders around as if they're Zach Steffen and Matt Turner during World Cup qualifying.
There's 2 players for every position. This was on the All or Nothing series about Arsenal. This was one of the big points that, Josh Kroenke was making in the back room, that they had to have 2 players in every position truly competing. And it seems that this has seeped down all the way through his Lego hair to Mikel Arteta, that he's got to go and do this really seriously. Who knows? We do not say, we've said this before, none of us see what happens in training. So we don't understand the internal dynamics of the squad, how his fellow defenders are feeling about him. there have been question marks about Ramsdale's distribution. He's a phenomenal shot stopper, phenomenal goalie, great energy, but I wonder about his distribution, and Raya seems to have like stronger distribution than him. And, managers who like to play out from the back, they want that. But yeah, that is a bold move, because the confidence hit it gives to a player who plays in let's face it, a confidence position, a supreme confidence position. It can be very, very, very dangerous.
A confidence position and a chemistry position with your centre backs. I mean, it's just not something you can turn on and off week to week. It's that you need those reps. It's a very, very singular approach. It is one that could be, it's a massive, massive call and a potentially massive season-defining gamble. But Arsenal open with their now traditional fast start, whirring into life, knocking the crowd instantly out the game. You have not faced true fear unless you have witnessed Bukayo Saka run at Mikalenko inside 60 seconds. Honestly, hardest thing about watching the opening exchanges in this game was just how quiet Goodison Park was. Like the fans, just exhausted by it all. We're booed out. We got nothing left to give. Goodison Park is a bear pit, a crucible, just a place of foment. Just like the last, you talk to Frank Lampard about the season he was able to escape relegation. He was like, it was the fans. It was that bear pit. It was insane there to hear it mute. Nothing to cheer. Not on this day. The fans, Dave, I felt are finally this 7-7-7 thing just shattered by it all. Total hopelessness.
Yeah, but also the players giving the fans nothing to go with, nothing to build off. It took Jordan Pickford being fouled in the area for them to have something to really get behind. It was, the way that the manager had them set up, Rog. They were so passive. They were so negative. They weren't trying to play any football at home, and that must be so depressing to watch.
Yeah, we're yet to score a goal at home in front of our own fans. This is Deutsch ball. This is Brexit ball. This is a snooze fest. Martinelli scored. It was VAR'd off, but it felt, as soon as he did, it felt like game over. Arsenal just overrunning that Everton midfield without anything to show for it. Goodison felt miserable. I was watching just the immense, just wallowing, the Everton pessimism. It felt like it could be felt through the television. So strong, that strain of singular pessimism, that it could go transatlantic. Second half, more desperate fare, more blocks by Everton than at tight end University. Arsenal still trying to find their rhythm. It's as if the dip for them last season made them feel less free-flowing, more self-aware, risk averse. Let's be honest, this was a game that was really all about how dire Everton are under Sean Dyche. Players all over the field who don't have to worry about playing well to keep their places. The opposite of the Arsenal ethos. And that includes Dyche himself, who must know, honestly, at this point, no one there can afford to fire him. All I can say, Dave, is if 7-7-7 think anyone is going to be inspired by the desperate crap that Everton are playing to buy Everton insurance or to trust Everton banking. Is that not like the potentially most suspect thing of all? We are worse than Wells Fargo.
Yeah, they also should be very careful around the Everton brothel. That would be a difficult thing to
come to my Everton monastery, fellow fans. The turnout, the most beautiful member of the Everton monastery, DCL, came on wearing a mask now because it's illegal, we know, to be so damned handsome. But I did remember when he did that we held on against Fulham and then conceded and lost. We held on against bloody Wolves before we crapped the bed. So when it came against Arsenal, it didn't surprise me at all. And the fact that the goal scored was so intricate, beautiful, just stunning collective play. It made it both hurt more and hurt less. Saka took a short corner to Ødegaard, Vieira on the edge of the area to Zinni, back to Ødegaard, back to Saka to Trossard. I think it was a no-look pass from Saka, which, my God, I stood up and applauded, even though I was being stabbed in the heart in that very moment. First goal of the season by Trossard, who just opened up his body with space, time, relish. And sometimes, Dave, I don't know if you've ever felt like this as a Chelsea fan, you can only admire this. This was like witnessing that kid finish a Rubik's Cube in like 3.3 seconds. You can only admire the beauty of the bullet which delivers your own death.
Yeah, it was a gorgeous goal. I mean, you wonder how many times out of 10, that goal would have been scored, because it was the finish was just perfect. Um, and in pretty much off the post. It only just made it, Rog. Um, it was precision that doesn't often come. It only comes when you desperately need the goal, and teams are playing against your team. It seems. Um, it was cruel. It was beautiful. It was deserved. Um, Everton, had they held on, it would have been something of a travesty against football in some ways. And I imagine, the feelings for Everton fans watching it were even more depressing at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I say for Arsenal, not that convincing, but they didn't have to be. And for Arteta, perhaps a win when playing badly, maybe the best feeling of all. Even better, voodoo over. First win at Goodison since 2016, 6 bloody years, bogey over. Every Arsenal fan, and they was like, oh, thank God. And we didn't get anyone injured by your dirty lot too. That was a very generous text at full time I received over and over and over. Wonder goal, tick. Clean sheet, tick. Champions League upcoming, playing PSV, the most American thing in the Netherlands since the Battle of Groningen. Everton, 25% possession, one shot on goal at home, so feeble, so one-dimensional, and that one dimension is shite. Gary Neville on the Sky broadcast said this, Davo: Goodison is a wonderful ground. I used to love coming here as a player. Now it's just dreary. The football's dreary. They're living off scraps. What are the Everton fans coming to see the game? What are they looking forward to? I mean, he's not wrong. Invincible season continues, 0 goals, 1 point from 5 games. Now, I will say, Davio, this is what I'm holding on to. If we can work on our goal difference a bit, I think this season we might be able to stay up with just 1 point.
Yeah, that would be interesting, by having a not too negative goal difference. I'm not sure that's how it works.
I think there's going to be 2 teams with 0 points at the end of the season. It'll be a battle to see who can get off 1 for the other relegation. That's a serious footballing point with a big S.
I mean, what was interesting to me is Arsenal, so Everton's best player at the beginning of this season, end of last season, has been Doucouré, and Arsenal, did a very good job muzzling him. Onana was barely, and Gay were, you barely saw them, barely heard their names during the broadcast. Beto, I think, looks bright. I think he, I love the effort he makes. DCL, wonderful to see him back, but not at his not back to his prime, without a doubt, as one of his attempts towards the end of the game, a very tame attempt. I don't know if it was a cross or a shot, or
the little
he
flick,
was trying to hit. Was he trying to hit the corner flag? I don't know what he was trying to do, but I don't know. I think teams have figured out how to play against the way that Sean Dyche is going to set them up to play. He's going to have to find something which he hasn't found very often in his managerial career. He's going to have to find something different, because it is a scrap, Rog. I don't think Everton are any worse than a bunch of teams who are down there, and I think they're better than a few of them, but they're going to have to start really playing some football. They can't do it by playing like this.
Banking, insurance, they're going to be selling, I know these wonders, they're going to be selling Everton My Pillows.
That'll be the first Everton product that you have no interest in buying, Rog. That will be an achievement. Okay, we're done with Everton. Are you okay? Have you got it off your chest?
Oh, don't get me started again. And he looks like Kendall Roy. Come on, let's move on.
Okay, let's depress some other fans. Could be the result of the weekend, Rog. Man United 1, Brighton 3. And that was closer than it sounds. In a headline ripped straight out of a Hitchcock film, Seagulls massacre at the Theatre of Dreams. Roberto De Zerbi's mob just ran rampant over the home side, starting with a really well-worked goal capped by who else? That guy Welbs. Danny Welbeck's 5th goal against United since leaving the club. Pascal Gross then sent Lisandro Martinez back to the Southern Hemisphere with a head fake before smashing home. And João Pedro made it 3 with an incisive instep finish. United pulled one back via Hannibal Mesbury, his first goal for the club, but it was no matter. Brighton continued to soar. United, meanwhile, not so much.
Oh, God. Manchester United facing Brighton. Brighton, a team so sublimely organised, they can weather the loss of just their heart, McAllister, Caicedo and Moore, as if they missed speed bumps, playing a team racked by self-sabotage and chaos. We were told that last season's Carabao Cup win was meant to be a platform for a surge towards title contention. Instead, just dreadful internal decision-making. It's led to almost a string of daily traumas. Mason Greenwood's bungled exit, the Anthony leave of absence, which is so harrowing, the trauma of Jadon Sancho's exile, and now the dead wind of the club sale itself, a litany of injuries, and even self-inflicted black eyes, truly awful ones, like inviting a convicted paedophile, I'm not making this up, to be a special guest at Old Trafford's first ever Women's Super League game. Just darkness after darkness. Eric Ten Hag, starting to cut a bewildered figure as his team had prized just 6 points from the first 4 games, goal difference of -2. It's honestly, David, watching them this season, it felt like the club PR team was just reeling from one daily debacle to another.
Yeah, and it's partly because clubs have the temerity to go into, the theatre of dreams and play football against Manchester United, where for years Man United could dominate against visiting teams, particularly teams like Brighton. Now Brighton came and played football, and Man United, they had chances in this game. They had, goals ruled out by millimeters. But ultimately, Brighton had so many chances to score, and Brighton, they'll finish you with the quality of players they've got at the top end of the pitch. And
By the
it
way,
was,
we're talking about quality of players, but that incredible stat that did the rounds before kickoff about how Manchester United, their starting 11 cost $430 million. Brighton's, we do say quality of players, and we're right to say that because they are effervescent. Their starting 11 was just $21 million. Players like Steele, Dunk, Dahoud, Lallana, Welbeck, all of them arrived for $0. Just free transfers. And it revolves around one man, Roberto De Zerbi. Yes, his team might have beaten Newcastle in the last game, but he made 6 bloody changes here. It doesn't seem to matter who plays for Brighton Football Club. I mean, it's remarkable. Evan Ferguson, hat-trick hero in the last game here, fit enough just for the bench. Purvis Estupiñán, Solly Marsh out altogether. But Brighton, they're not talented individuals alone. They are a true system. They're an idea. They're a footballing frame of mind. And that's why they just roll on. And it came to pass because, as you say, United actually, they open with intensity and focus. Home debut for Højlund, who looked lively. Start that had, and United fans looking at each other being like, yeah, despite it all, with some good players here at Old Trafford, we're still United, until suddenly they weren't. Brighton changed their formation. They spread their back line wider to accentuate their width. Cue a flowing move, started and finished by Danny Welbeck, that old United warhorse who now only seems to score against Manchester United. Adam Lallana were one of the most flamboyant dummies you'll see, freezing the defence, allowing Welbs to slap home and celebrate right in front of the Stretford end. His 5th goal against United, the team he left age 24, most by any former United player turned Benedict Arnold in cleats. Cue Brighton fans singing, "He left because you're shit." No one loves Danny Wells more than you, David.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan, regular listener to this pod. No, I've loved him for years. No forward in the Premier League plays better defense. He's just a fantastic defender as well. And look what happened on this move. You're right. They spread the defense out. He came back into midfield to get the ball, and suddenly they've got a midfield overload. He starts it, he finishes it. As you're right, Lallana, another sort of ignored Premier League player, great Premier League player for Southampton and Liverpool. He ends up with that phenomenal dummy and a great finish by Welbeck. Everybody says, he couldn't miss. But no, yeah, you could miss. Watch across the Premier League players missing that chance. And he makes it. Doesn't seem to matter whether it comes to his head or which foot or where on his body it comes to. Welbs will put it away. Fantastic.
Especially when he's playing against United, who were stunned. And on 40 minutes, bless Højlund, he thought he'd scored, ran away to celebrate like he was the new darling, only for the goal to be VAR'd off, for the ball having gone millimetres out of bounds, as you say. But United, so often, all that talent, they became just Rashford, taking on all comers. And that approach came to haunt them in the 52nd minute. Pascal Gross, stealth weapon, sending Martinez for a hot dog with a delicious body feint. Such happy feet. Finished a goal. which started with 30 Brighton passes over 1 minute 35 of straight possession. Go and look at Brighton's Twitter feed. They put this out, marveling at it. They called it a football style that they're trying to get to catch on. It's called Derzabissimo. And it was just stunning to witness. Yes, gross finishing, 4 goals at Old Trafford now, the most in the Premier League history. With only Steven Gerrard and Mo Salah, big names, having scored more. But bloody hell, that third goal, the hammer. The amazing thing, Davo, Brighton fans even had the joy of seeing former Barca star boy turned De Zerbi's latest reclamation project, Ansu Fati, come on. What a gent. Since he took over De Zerbi, only Arsenal and Manchester City have scored more goals in the Premier League. But what was shocking was tactically, and there were boos for Ten Hag in this game when he took off Højlund and replaced him with Martial. It looked like he'd barely prepared the team for this Brighton onslaught. That we all saw it coming.
Yeah, it's almost like watching an NFL game where the defensive and offensive coordinators don't have a plan for what they see once they've seen it. For the first 20 minutes, Man United were fantastic. But then when Brighton adjusted, Man United had no adjustment back. They didn't seem to know how to go and deal with them. And yes, Man United maybe on another day would have scored more goals, but it's the concession of 3, and it could have been more, that is the more alarming thing for this team at home.
Yeah, you look at the United, that second goal, the players just trotting around, very little pressure on the ball, very little care. But for Brighton, the game's ended with joy. The fans singing, "Can we play you every week?" This is at Old Trafford, as you say. And down the stretch, whenever United were in possession, the Brighton fans sang, "Can we get our ball back?" It's amazing. I mean, this is Brighton just crowing, swaggering in Manchester United's face. Their official account tweeted out, "Back-to-back Premier League wins here. We just love playing at Old Trafford." De Zerbi, slightly more philosophical. Football's nice because the small team can win. Brighton is becoming not a big team, but it's not a surprise. The quality of the players is very high. And I read an interview with the Brighton owner, Tony Bloom. He's a data visionary. He's a genius. And he said midweek that Roberto De Zerbi has taught even him, quote, to see football in a completely different way. I picture it different. That's the biggest thing. Football's not what I thought it was because of De Zerbi. Lewis Dunk explained it, the style of play, when to release the ball. All our games now are about pressure, playing with opposition teams when they're pressing high and pressing low, when to pass the ball, the timing of movement. Before, I didn't really know about that. It's all the details of moving and angles. It is amazing to witness, Davo. It is incredible. I can only look at it as an Everton fan. The whole organisation of Brighton, from the top to the bottom, the alignment, the vision, the ideas, the creativity, the smart investment, take my hat off. But for United, what would you say about them? It feels like a sense of a season that's not started. That 20-game unbeaten run at Old Trafford, over in the Premier League. They look the opposite, the exact opposite of the Seagulls. All skill and smart money and intelligent ideas. United, just an expensive scrap heap.
Yeah, and still, I watched that game, and I'd tell you this, we'll get to Chelsea later, but I watched from a Chelsea point of view, and if I could choose whether to be following Chelsea right now or United, I would be choosing United, because I still think they've got more potential, they've got more players, they're more exciting. Yes, there are big question marks. I think a big question mark about their goalkeeper included, Rog, which is they gave up. We talked earlier in the pod about goalkeepers and what happens to confidence, but you give up David De Gea, a player of that quality, and bring in a new goalkeeper to the Premier League, and it's going to take a while to adjust. That seems a little alarming. And that starts at the back, and it starts to sort of fuel the confidence you've got across your back line when you've got question marks about your own keeper. They've had injuries, they've had some things that have disrupted their club, certainly to some veteran players who are very important to them. But I think the United still have a lot, and you could see them, or I can see them, still figuring a way to go and come back. Remember, this is a Premier League. We do overreact, as you and I have spoken about a lot, to sort of one result, to the weekend's results, to each game as it happens. This is a 38-game season. I still think United are going to be there or thereabouts. I don't mean at the top of the league, but I mean around the top 4 by the end of the season.
I hope you're right. You're right. We do overreact to one game, but this is now 6 points from 5 matches, a goal difference of -4. And I like Ten Hag. I really do. That's mostly the pain as I face United. This is their worst run right now in the Premier League era. These are Louis van Gaal at his worst numbers. This morning's daily dose of bad news: Aaron Wan-Bissaka now out for up to 2 months with a hamstring injury. Visit to Bayern Munich this week coming up. Harry Kane's Bayern Munich. That's some way to start your return to Champions League play. It's just not what the doctor ordered. Those boos during the game, doubt starting to swirl that Ten Hag, who is undoubtedly a tactical gent, undoubtedly, I mean, the way he weathered the Ronaldo political buzzsaw shows he has some real nous. But we're really watching the potential for another gentleman starting to drown in that darkness of that fog of issues.
West Ham 1, Manchester City 3, the Glaswegian Guardiola against the real article as David Moyes and his beautiful love handles, Rog, hosts the return of Pep to the technical area after that back surgery. And being the type of host he is, Moyes not just going to let you waltz into his gaff and have your way. You got to earn it. And it was the Irons who took the lead in this one with a stooping James Ward-Prowse header off a brilliant counter. It was a lovely team goal. But from there, it was City who stormed right back. Goals from Jeremy Doku, who looked really tasty in this one.
So
A
good.
Bernardo Silva finish. And after missing a fair few chances, one from the big man, Erling Haaland, they capped this win. But it took them quite a lot of the game to get there, Rod. City stay perfect. 5 wins from 5.
Massive clash. This was like as close as we'll get footballing to watching a Cobra and a Mongoose have a little scrap. Premier League unbeatens, two teams whose fans spent the game. The Champions League winning City, West Ham, oldie style winners of the Conference League, chanting at each other, champions of Europe, we know what we are. Oh, never change, West Ham fans. City, of course, looking to make it 5 wins out of 5. Pep returning from back surgery to face that gauntlet of bubbles. David Moyes led the Hammers to 3 wins and a draw in their first 4. I spoke to him last week. You can find the interview on YouTube. I love speaking to this man. I find his career deeply, deeply life-affirming. And he really talks about how he relishes this kind of game, one in which he knows his side will barely touch the ball. I mean, Brighton, they had, 22%, but they can spring forward and be clinical in key moments. So they had no fear as City dominated the game, opening by creating multiple chances. There's one from Gvardiol setting up Erling Haaland at the back post, only to see Erling just uncharacteristically brout his pants, the ball miles wide. And David, because Haaland's been so incredible, so superior. When he does miss, it's like, when he does, I'm going to pretend I'm human for a minute. I do find myself like just refreshing my streaming channel, thinking there must be a problem with it. But we saw this in the Brighton game. West Ham set up in the style of Moyes in a bar fight. I'll take punch after punch after punch. Then when you become complacent, I'm gonna headbutt you like a Cincinnati Bengals fan. And so they started forays forward on that counter. And in the 36th minute, it was Vladimir Sufal playing a 1-2 with Jared Bowen, flew down the right, lifted a triple beam balance weighted ball back to the back stick. James Ward-Prowse came streaking in at the speed of light, headed it home. David, James Ward-Prowse moves to West Ham, and now he's doing headers.
Yeah, I know, exactly. He's not just scoring from set pieces. The quality of his set pieces were also outstanding throughout the game. Yeah, fantastic player. I mean, did he even need to be reborn? He's been so good for so long, but even more reborn in the capital, in the East End, at the former Olympic Stadium.
Proper
Wonderful
reborn.
goal. Yeah.
Proper reborn. Watching him wheel away with his arms crossed in that just ever intimidating iron sign, the most intimidating sign in football. It was like seeing the captain of the chess club suddenly just inexplicably turn up with an earring. Manchester City had been completely and totally moised. But this is City. Pep sitting there amidst those bubbles of joy, just seething. And whatever he said at halftime worked. 43 seconds into the second half, Belgium wonder, proper impressive. Jeremy Doku got the ball out left, just drove at Sufal, who made the mistake of giving him an inch of space. Classic hand down, man down situ. Just a moment of wonder for Doku. His first goal for Manchester City. That 21-year-old who arrived in the off-season from Rennes for right around $60 million. What's amazing, City lose Riyad Mahrez. They lose so many players. Gundogan in the off season, and they bring in They bring in this gentleman, and he's instantly a wonder to watch. We always talk about how City, it's just money. Anyone can do that with money. And Doku was not a cheap buy, but bloody hell, their scouting and recruitment, it almost seems like they don't miss, David.
Yeah, this is a brilliant
It's
buy
incredible.
and a player who, you know, didn't score a lot of goals between Anderlecht and Rennes where he played before, but they obviously saw something in him, and it's that speed and the speed of footwork and the confidence and whatever he's had. And they looked at him, they thought, if we put him around better players, this guy could be electric. And he is around better players. Previously when he was playing, he was going to get double teamed every single time. You can't afford to double team uh, Doku, but because who else are you going to leave open? But they may have to now. That cut in from the left inside, that movement with his right foot. I mean, I was thinking, I hope Mudryk is watching this. It was absolutely superb.
Yeah, the knock on him was his finishing had not been all that. This was all that. And post game, Pep Guardiola said he's a sweet kid who is, quote, shy. When you buy a young player like him for 4 or 5 years, you have to be patient. We can't expect too much. Oh my God. Pep is never more terrifying when he's talking something down. 75th minute, more City, little scoop. There it is from Julian Alvarez. He and Haaland, incredibly, have either scored or assisted 11 of City's 14 league goals. This one floated right into the corridor of uncertainty, like a grenade just lobbed into a German trench on Band of Brothers. And it was one of the old guard who was there to pull the pin, Bernardo Silva, with a clinically intelligent finish. That's what he does. What a footballer that man is. He's a gent who honestly would be the creative star of almost any other team he played on. Little gent scores big goals in big moments, and a player who in the 86th minute set up Haaland to kill off the game. Haaland has spent much of the game trying to throw us off the AI scent by pretending to be human and vulnerable. Don't be fooled, listeners. Don't be fooled, viewers. There was no way he was not leaving without eating just a little bit. In the capital city. Cue the City fans who made the trip, doing the Poznan, as City made it 5 from 5 in Moyes' house, bubbles. Bonnie Renee, Davo, he wrote in The Guardian, City were once again all over West Ham like a heavy weather front. They play Nottingham Forest and Wolves next. And they'll probably still be perfect, which is incredible, before they face up to Arsenal. Circle this day for the clash of civilizations, October the 8th.
Yeah, West Ham are a very, very good side, particularly at home. And they dismantled them with just exquisite finishing. But West Ham had some chances themselves, Rog. I think we're going to hear a lot more from them this season.
I hope so.
Okay, Tottenham 2, Sheffield
Oh.
United 1. What a game of football this was, with the visiting Blades looking to have engineered a classic smash and grab job by resurrecting the art of the long throw-in, one which led to a Gustavo Hamer goal. But after an emotionally tumultuous week in which he admitted needing psychological help and broke down in tears on the bench with Brazil, Richarlison scored a glancing near-post header for the ages to tie it up. Then in the 90th plus 10 minute, he laid one off for that Swedish ginge, Kulu, to blast home the winner. What a game. Spurs fan, you remain undefeated. Big Ange ball is like a Saturday morning bacon, egg and cheese. Great for morale, horrible for your blood pressure.
Oh, God. Davo, Spurs flew into this one unchanged. Ange trying to dampen suddenly soaring expectations with this traditional, just erudite human flourish. You cannot miss Ange pre-match conferences, because I don't know what you learn about football, but you learn so much about bloody life. He said one part of your life could be flying, but there'll be something. It could be a family member, could be a health issue, could be a financial issue. Footballers are not immune from that. And he might as well have been talking about Richarlison, the one remaining tiny blemish, the one remaining not just person but thing in Ange's Care Bear joyous kingdom, that footballing care a lot, who remained in a funk. And Richie, it's been hard to watch him. So I know a lot of you think he's a heel and can't stand him. I've got to tell you, I love Richie. I love everything about him. To watch him visibly lost, visibly floundering, and then during the international break, where he just was, miserable with Brazil. He talked about how he's been affected by off the field issues, he's struggling with his mental health, and that he was, quote, going to seek counselling upon his return. And Ange talked about backing him. Footballers have got all the money they need. We think that's a perfect life, but it doesn't make you immune from life itself. David, what I most love about Ange, The results are amazing. The football is startling, but he's so good with the life truths just couched in football, Dave. I think in our footballing monastery, we're
Yeah,
all
I was
Ange
going to say
curious,
we
right?
want Big Ange as head brother. I love
The
that.
Book of Ange. The Book of
Yeah.
Ange.
Yeah, I'll just make the mead, Rog. I could be that sort of Friar Tuck in the side, just making the mead and preparing the drinks, preparing the
Would you be a good
Camarena.
beekeeper?
I would be but the beekeeping and bartender. I think I could do both of those pretty well.
Oh, Dave, I've got to say, beekeeper slash bartender, that's like, that's Declan Rice level of just combining pretty well everything. I've always wanted to be a beekeeper. I've like genuinely up there with learning the banjo and mastering Aikido, but I am scared of the old beekeeping also. But I'd love that you're going to handle that in making the mead in
Yeah,
my monastery.
I'll definitely do that. But what I loved about Richarlison, Rog, is it just also showed the power of a new haircut. And I don't want to make light of his mental health. It's such a serious issue for so many people and for so many, you know, professional athletes as well. And it's wonderful that professional athletes are now coming forward and talking about this because it encourages everyone to go and figure out how to seek help. But the power of a new haircut, Rog, a new haircut, a new attitude, a new feel. That
Oh my
goal, I
God.
mean, it was wonderful when he
That's
nodded
why
it in.
you've just explained to me why I'm so miserable, because I am deprived humanly of that power. We balls, we are doomed. We are doomed. For this game though, it was fascinating. Sheffield United, one of the two teams yet to win a point this season, bedraggled, injury ridden, resolute though. Spurs went through their tricks. Sonny in on goal didn't work. Maddison shots didn't work. Kulu chances, Fotheringham in the Sheffield goal. Just catching everything that was thrown at him. This was in seasons past. Spurs would just run out of ideas. There'd be a point where the confidence just burned off them, and then you kind of knew what would happen, and it did happen. Spurs are so familiar, Spurs fans, with the concept of gallows humour, and when the Blunt Blades took the lead with a really primitively creative goal, Jack Robinson's long throw flying over everyone. Gustavo Hamer just smashing it unmarked from the far post. And we've said all season, you've said this, Davo, the true test of new Spurs, the Book of Ange, will come when things get tough. This was that moment, wasn't it?
It was this moment. And you said that in previous seasons, let's face it, in previous seasons, there would not have been 16 minutes of added time, which is a new wrinkle to this entire thing. But Tottenham had been the better team. They'd been all over Sheffield United for the whole game, as we see a lot when these smaller teams come up to big smoke, come to the bigger clubs. They can figure a way to sit back and frustrate you. But Tottenham, in the added time, they redoubled, they retripled their energy, and it became inevitable as the clock wore on that they were going to find a way back in.
It did. And by the way, not inevitable under Conte, not inevitable under Mourinho in seasons of yore, but this is Ange Ball. Crucially, the Spurs fans, this is what I loved about this game. The Spurs fans just stayed with their team. Richarlison came on in the 80th minute. Big call by Ange, taking off Son, who scored his hat-trick last week. Richarlison actually missed his first chance. But then 12 minutes of added time was awarded. More was actually played. Big love to Austin Trusty, the Philadelphia Union product, who came on to make his Premier League debut for Sheffield United. I want to be clear, what followed was not cause and effect, but I do want to celebrate the man there. 98th minute, though, Spurs 15th corner. Perisic curved it onto the head. David, Premier League script writers, it had to be right, / fate, I guess. Richarlison, my God, he ran back to that halfway line, po-faced. He knew there was more to come, right? And you felt it.
Yeah, it was a wonderful move. His movement from the corner was just outstanding. I mean, we've seen Richarlison score quite a few goals. I'm not sure I've ever seen him score that goal. It was a wonderful move. He got up, glancing header into the far post. Brilliant goal. One of the most satisfying goals to watch a Premier League player score.
But he wasn't done. Was it 101st minute? Capped that latest comeback in the Premier League, in the history of the bloody thing. Charging into the box, slipping it to Kulu, opened up his body, slid past his marker Robinson, lashed home through legs, delirious scenes, and stoic fist pump. But man, so happy for Richarlison. Can I just say that again? I know a lot of you don't like this human being, but he's a sensitive human being. That's what is at the root of all of it. And I loved his redemption moment here. I loved it more than I can say. Proof, Davo, we always say this, right? Isn't it proof that talking about your problems is half the way to fixing them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the wonderful example that he set um, this past week talking about this. And I hope this helps other people. And I hope Richie gets the help he needs. And we see what a fantastic footballer he is. There's a lot more for him to give to the Premier League and to his national side.
Game ended with real scenes. The delirious Spurs fans, the delirious Spurs players forming a line, saluting the fans. Just immense watching Sonny, captain, proper Ange Ball captain, pushing Richarlison to the front to make sure he got the spotlight. Sonny gets it, leading with empathy. That is the Ange way. He said post game, Sonny, seeing Richarlison score felt better than me scoring, which is, if you know Sonny, that is saying something. Huge loss. Tough loss for Sheffield, we should acknowledge. He remained pointless. At Nicholas Puzar tweeted, as Charles Barkley said, sometimes a light at the end of the tunnel is just a train. Rumours now cracking from way up north that the club have reached out to old gaffer Chris Wilder to see if he'll return as manager. Shifting sands there. But this one is really about I'm loving Big Ange instead. Postecoglou, Davo, not lost in 50 home games as manager. 42 wins, 8 draws. Arsenal and Liverpool now await two enormous tests. Buzzsaw gauntlet to come. Question for you from GFOP Grant Vort. He insta messaged us. What is the German word? And I know you're a linguist in Men in Blazers. What's the German word for Harry Kane leaving and Tottenham getting better?
Well, it ends in something like probably the ending sound is Amarung in some kind, but I'll work on that and I'll get back to you, Grant, and we'll figure that out.
I
Talking
think
of
it's
Arsenal,
the Ewing theory, isn't it?
oh, could be, it
Or
could be.
maybe it's just the Ange ball.
Yeah, the
The
Anspruch
Ange
Damerung,
ball.
something. It is remarkable. I was watching Tottenham, and they felt. I mean, I say this as a compliment, and I'm sure Tottenham fans won't take it as such. It felt Arsenal-y what they were doing. It felt like Arsenal energy. Those sort of last-minute wins that they had um, last season. You know, so many games that they managed to sort of come back and tie, and then win right at the end. It felt like that, and I am fascinated to see the North London derby coming up the next few weeks. Roger, can't wait for that.
It's gonna next week. It's gonna be immense. It's like it's just filled, Davo. And you don't say this often for North London Derby, filled with good vibes, and it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay, Wolves 1, Liverpool 3. Klopp and Liverpool didn't like the early kickoff coming off of the international break, and so they just decided not to show up until halftime. But then they did. My lord, a trinity of Mo Salah assists capped by Cody Gakpo, captain leader, Robbo, Andy Robertson, and a Harvey Elliott strike that was technically ruled an own goal, but we're giving it to old two first names. And just like that, new look Liverpool have won 4 on the bounce since that draw on opening day.
Yeah, Liverpool flying in off, thrashing Villa in the last game before the break, heading to face another Midlands opponent, listing Wolves, yet to experience a home win all season. These were the kind of matches. Actually, going into this, I realised that the Liverpool actually lost last season. They lost this game. They got thumped 3-0. Just unable to grab control of the midfield. Everything in front of them fell apart, felt lesser. And in this one, Verge out, Trent out with a knock. First stop for local lad Gerald Quanso, who's been with the Reds since he was 7 years of age. So bloody happy for him. And Wolves, I've got to say, are brilliant from the off. First to every second ball, surging, confidence based on, well, it could only be bloody self-delusion. And it paid off. Neto, a player who's been Wolves everything this season, assisting on almost every goal they scored. I think he made it 4 out of 6, charging fearlessly at the Liverpool back line, leaving Soberschlein his weight blown past the terrified Joe Gomez and Joel Matip before squaring a stunning ball that completely confounded Andy Robertson, leaving Hwang to thrash home from a sharp angle. God bless Alisson with a classic Pickford save, pulling off an incredible parry, but doing so well 3 yards behind his own line. Could easily have been 2-0. Neto again destroying Joe Gomez for fun, serving the ball up for Cunha, who got it all wrong. Goal at his mercy. Rose up to miss it with his head, kind of tummied it harmlessly away from close range. They've had Liverpool. I mean, McAllister, you got to think about this. Just played a World Cup game midweek, 12,000 feet above sea level in La Paz, Bolivia, at a high altitude. I mean, that'll do it to you, won't it, with an early morning kickoff?
Yeah, Without a doubt. I mean, it's so tough. I mean, even off a plane from Los Angeles to New York, I'm ended for 3 or 4 days. So I don't know how these players do it who return from South America for international games, particularly the games at altitude.
Harried, rusty. And at halftime, tension was high. Klopp, Liverpool had played 6 early Saturday morning games last season. I think 3 they'd lost, 3 they'd drawn. Klopp was really contemptuous when asked about their dodgy record, laughed off journalists who asked him about the statistics. There was more than just a result at stake here. And at halftime, a Liverpool win seemed like a distant possibility, but Jurgen made changes, pulled off McAllister at halftime. Luis Diaz came on, energised. The fullback started to get higher at the park, hemmed Wolves back, and the impact was immediate. The Reds went level. Jota and Gakpo on the verge of both coming off, I think, combined to partner with Salah through Wolves' gut. Gakpo fired home. On came chaos. Darwin Nunez. Game became suddenly really about preserving a point for Wolves. Time wasting, masterclass, incoming, and the turnaround completed with a huge degree of vindication by a fine Liverpool move, finished off by a give and go. Captain of the day, Andy Robertson, who'd been at fault for that first goal, clipped the ball through Sarr, marked his 200th Liverpool appearance in fine style, then celebrated like any Glaswegian at closing time when the proclaimers come on the jukebox. Cue relief. Elliott capped it off by conjuring an own goal as Wolves wilted. Gravenberch made a cameo late substitute debut. And after that bitter tasting first half, Liverpool 15 match unbeaten run rolls on. And Davo, you love these kind of wins where, Villa they obliterated, but Wolves, this was tenacity, this was perseverance, this was just all good vibe in the face of adversity.
Yeah, this was a great comeback, and Wolves playing, despite their league position, playing some really good, inventive football, like taking it to Liverpool. I was really impressed with them in this game, and not for the first time this season. But Liverpool found a way to come back in. Tough for these big teams after international breaks. So many of their players are playing international football. So many of their players traveling so many miles. But ultimately, a squad that you don't think of the Liverpool squad being incredibly deep, incredibly, offering Klopp a lot of choices, but he found ways to tinker with it and get the performances out of the boys. Okay, Rog, Aston Villa 3, Crystal Palace 1. That's another second half 3-1 comeback win. Palace took the lead via Odsonne Edouard, only to see Villa storm back and smash home 3 goals. The first low-key strike of the weekend. Just an incredible hit from Jean Duran on the swivel. A penalty from Douglas Luiz, one which was controversially given away by your mate Chris Richards, Rog, who was otherwise outstanding in this game, we should say. And a third from CONCACAF's Leon Bailey. This Villa side, Rog, they're scrappier than a dumpster raccoon, and they're up to 7th place because of it.
Yeah, I mean, the game changed once DRB and CONCACAF Thunder's Leon Bailey went out wide, started to feed John Duran and Ollie Watkins up top. Palace couldn't contain that late show. We do want to acknowledge tip of the hat to Birmingham, Alabama's Chris Richards, stepped in here to fill in for Mark Gahey. You had a hip knack on England duty and bar the penalty which he conceded. He looks so complete out there, physically strong. But it's the intelligent decision making that makes him stand out. 23-year-old, who's a great friend of the show. He'd had a bloody hard time fighting for playing time since he arrived over a year. Was almost out in the last transfer window. It is thrilling to watch him soar and seize his moment. Godspeed to Chris, and also Godspeed to Roy Hodgson. Davo taken them well earlier in the morning, missed the game in the Midlands. Palace just said that the 76-year-old was, quote, a little under the weather. Get well soon, Roy.
Oh, I'm going to be at Palace at the weekend, Rog. Look forward to seeing them. Hope that Roy is leading them out. Newcastle 1, Brentford 0. Not quite the clash of new money versus advanced thinking we were hoping for here, Rog. Despite a pretty pedestrian affair, the Toon finally put a tourniquet on the bleeding caused by 3 straight losses. The lone goal here, a 64th minute penalty, well taken by Callum Wilson. And thank goodness, because no one would want to see the Geordie faithful late on a Saturday night after what would have been a fairly disastrous start to the season.
Yeah, slight panic stations going into this one in the Kingdom of Piff, wherever that is. Newcastle.
Yeah, no idea.
They lost just 5 games last season, but rolled out here having experienced already 3 in this campaign. Eddie Howe having to poo-poo rumours that he was on shaky ground. Rumours no doubt spread by his number 2, Jason Tyndall, such a frenemy. Win any which way was needed, and this was very much any which way. The game largely forgettable. Brentford 5-man back line, strong. Newcastle confused in key moments. Struggling to contain the bees, clever counter-attacks, and the game turned on a controversial moment that, I'll say it objectively, that morally bankrupt Ginger Anthony Gordon tumbling over a charging Brentford goalkeeper, Mark Flecken. Was it a penalty, David? I mean, he felt gravity really, really intensely, I think we could say, under contact, but the goalkeeper was trying to pull out. Gordon quasi-initiating, but that just may be my hate.
Well, yeah, and also, added to the case against the ball, not in a place that Gordon was going to be able to play it after the challenge either. Um, so yeah, but yeah, I understand also how people, get really upset when they feel that that goalkeepers are allowed to do anything to offensive players, in the box, and that if it was any other player, outfield player in a key moment, they would be censored for these moments. So there it was. Ultimately, I think deserved on the balance of play for Newcastle to get this chance from the spot. And Callum Wilson, wow, he's a guy who you just feel is going to finish it every single time.
Yeah,
Great
he did,
preparation, great
because
finish.
he has 10 penalties thrashed out of 10. His motto on penalty kicks, he said post game, they asked him what he thinks. He says, I crap you not. He says, pressure is for tyres. I love that. If that's just how you get rid of the idea of pressure, just by saying that, I just love it. Pressure, Davo, it's for tyres. He's got stealth quality, 41 goals in 80 appearances. Not a lot of that on display Saturday, but much needed win. Clean sheet to boot. Newcastle out of crisis for now. They head to the San Siro for their first Champions League game in 20 years. I can't wait to watch that against Milan.
Wow, pressure is for tyres. That should be the slogan of our monastery, Roger. I love
Isn't
that.
it insane? That's what. How'd you get out? By telling myself pressure is for tyres.
Tyres. Fulham 1, Luton 0. The difference in this one, Rod, some box slop from the Vinicius they told you not to worry about. Carlos Vinicius gives the Cottagers their second win of the season. The Hatters missed just a host of chances here, and they become just the first team to lose their first 4 Premier League games since Swindon Town in 93-94.
Yeah, they do improve week on week, Luton. Still not close to having enough to grab a point in a game in which their goalkeeper got a yellow card for time wasting just past the half-hour mark. That's quite an achievement, mate. I mean, David, is that not almost worthy of points in its own right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm
mean,
willing to give that.
I give you a point for chutzpah. Fulham's lack of clinicality, that's starting to be a theme in this post-Mitro world. Raul Jimenez endeavour without sharpened teeth took Carlos Vinicius just 3 minutes after a 62nd minute substitution to be the difference. I want to draw attention though to another massive performance by a friend of ours, Tim Ream. So many players we talked about were knackered by the international break. That man, I mean, how old is he, Davo? The only man in the Premier League with grandchildren. Just roll back in. Enormous performance, 153 touches, 4 out of 5 ground duels were monster performance by an incredible human, even better podcaster. Catch the Tim Ream American Dream podcast now on the Men in Blazers Media Network, baby. Luton search for the first Premier League point should end when? Check's calendar, 2 weeks' time, September 30th, when you travel to Everton.
Oh, that's a huge game. Huge game for both
Huge.
teams, Rog. I know,
Huge.
it's so bizarre.
I know, that's where we are. That's who we are now.
Well, another huge game for Everton Football Club is the game coming up about this time that the pod is released. Nottingham Forest are going to be hosting Burnley Football Club. And talking of Burnley Football Club, there's quite a surreal video of one of their co-owners, future NFL Hall of Famer JJ Watt, interviewing their manager, Premier League icon Vincent Company. And it is on the Men in Blazers YouTube page. What a time to be alive. Go and check it out and subscribe to our YouTube.
Yeah, JJ Watt, incredible human being, future Hall of Famer, turned mad football fan and Burnley owner. The interview is amazing. Talks candidly with manager who returned his team to the Premier League, Vincent Company. They talk about leadership, about how the English tabloid media is so much more destructive than what JJ experienced in the United States. And they go deep on the nuances of the Belgian waffle scene. I've honestly, honestly never sat in on a conversation like it. And it was bloody fascinating to listen to. Savor every second.
Okay, on to our final game of the show. I always know we're in trouble when we're in the
You're in the
Everton
Everton
slot.
position.
We're in the Everton slot, Rog. This is not good. Bournemouth 0, Chelsea 0. Poch's side had same old story, Rog. Plenty of possession, plenty of chances, and yet still couldn't pick that cherry lock. Chelsea with still just the one win through 5 games, 5 points, 5 games, a goal difference of 0, Rog. Oh, it really is getting tough to watch this team, particularly super early on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, Pochettino had 2 entire weeks to stew on his team's shot loss to Nottingham Forest before the break. Looking how they conceded right through the heart of their expensive but meat gut. He talked about how he wanted his team to be fiercer, dirtier. He said, I was really naughty, the worst as a player. I was the most competitive, but I had the quality that we don't have in this team. And he was right. This gent who's also battling, it should be said, a glut of injuries. Caicedo now out post-international break. Lavia, so cruel, he could be out for 6 weeks. Staggering stat from Opta, Leslie Ugachukwu became the 37th player to start a league game for Chelsea this year. And after losing already this season to Nottingham Forest and West Ham and yet to win on the road since March, Pochettino admitted, we have to win. We have to show that we're Chelsea. We have no excuses. But Deba, how did you feel ahead of this one?
Well, it was the 19-year-old. Well, ahead of it, I looked at the team sheet and I was like, wow, like with all this money spent, and this is the team we're putting out here, so little experience. And players coming off these exhausting international breaks. Enzo Fernandez coming back from South America. I mean, it was tough. Conor Gallagher as captain was interesting, raised a few eyebrows in my household. And I knew it was going to be a hard game. Bournemouth have been pretty good this season. Tied opening day with West Ham, I believe, and I've seen them play well. So I was a little scared about it, honestly.
God, to Bournemouth, the War Cherries under Iraola, still looking for the first win. Scrappy start to the game in the Dorset rain. Bournemouth pressing, Chelsea trying to flicker through Raz and Mudryk, a start for the first time under Poch, who preferred him to Cole Palmer. And this, David, it's fascinating emotionally. This weekend, 20 years to the week since Chelsea, or as we know them, the modern incarnation of Chelsea, effectively born under Roman Abramovich, where just an enormous amount of money just flowed into that squad under him almost immediately, delivering glory. Because back then, Chelsea's spending, well, there was nothing like it to compare. And 20 years on, under God Burley, £1 billion has been spent. But now so many teams are moneyed. Money without a plan doesn't have the impact, especially when you splurge all of it without signing a singular striker with Nkuku and Broha both out. Here it was you're very green, you're very raw Nicholas Jackson who hit the post. All that money splurged, Davo. Just 5 goals all season.
Yeah, and that's the issue. The defense was pretty good in this game, even though Bournemouth did have chances and threatened them. I should say the one player who stood out in this game, who was superb, was probably our most unheralded signing. The young player from Rennes, the other player from Rennes. We're mentioning this pod, Leslie Agochukwu. He was superb in this game. I was blown away by that performance. But other than that incredibly expensive front line, Sterling, Mudryk, Nicholas Jackson, really created very, very little. And part of it is because of how slow the ball moves from the back to the front in this team. And this has been under successive managers, the issue that Chelsea have really had. It's how to generate the offense, and the quality of the final ball so poor from Gallagher. Mudryk made an amazing run down the left in the opening minutes of the game and literally blasted a ball so hard across the box, like an Exocet missile couldn't have finished it, Rog. It was this was going on the entire game. It was really difficult to watch.
It is an agony. I mean, by the way, Bournemouth, I spent time with Bournemouth owner Bill Foley on Friday for a really, really interesting conversation. I think it's going to air next week, next Monday. He talked about the decision to replace Gary O'Neill with Iraola. His line was Bournemouth needed to play more proactively long term if they were to survive. Here, though, they honestly looked like old school Bournemouth. They sat back, they soaked up, they played long when they could. But that's all they needed. Sterling, I think, hitting the bar off a peach of a free kick, that ball dropping agonisingly onto the line, so bloody cruel. You can say both goalkeepers had strong games, which kind of tells you all you need to know. Bournemouth came to life down the stretch. Chelsea looked knackered. But what shocked me from your end is just how no one stood up and led in moments of challenge.
There's
no leadership.
Leader. There's no leader.
They all just shied away, right?
Thanks for mentioning that. Sanchez did play incredibly well in goal. He deserves some credit. He made some great saves, or Bournemouth would have won this game. Yeah, there is no leader. Conor Gallagher is not really a captain this game. He's not. He's a good footballer, but he's not good enough to captain Chelsea in my mind.
I mean, Chelsea wanted to get rid of him in the transfer window. You've got Raz there, who's a veteran. You've got Thiago Silva, and
I'm sure as soon as Romeo Lavia comes back from injury, I think he will be gone. And Sterling is a quiet leader. I
thought you were going to say, I'm sure he'll be captain at 19 years of age.
It's possible. Sterling is a leader. We shouldn't not say that he isn't a leader. He's a leader in so many ways, but he's quiet. He's unassuming. But yeah, no one could really sort of get the head. I mean, Chelsea had so many chances, so much room. In the first half, Bournemouth sort of said, come here, Blues from London, take us apart down the middle or take us apart on the wide. Oh, would you be interested in our left side? Like they were letting Chelsea do whatever they want. Chelsea just could not find a way to make a final ball or put the ball on on target. It was terrible. Raheem, yes, desperately unlucky with that free kick made by another very good Mudryk run inside, and Mudryk glimmered, but he's not this is a player. Had we paid 4 million for Mudryk, I'd be saying, Rog, wait a minute. He was worth the 4 million we paid for him. At 100 million, I just don't see it. He just doesn't have the level of experience that you would ever pay that amount of money from him. Whatever wages he's on, he's being overpaid.
Can I interest you in some Everton insurance or some Everton banking?
Exactly. I'll take an Everton sandwich. I'll take anything at this point.
I mean, ultimately, as a very wise man once said, can't start a fire without a spark. This game was honestly sparkless. It was what it was, a forgettable game featuring a 14th place team against a 16th. 14 away games in the Premier League without a win now for Pochettino. 9 Premier League games without a win for Bournemouth. This was middling fare, summed up by the fact that quite appropriately, this is amazing, the first 0-0 of the entire season. 1 win in 5 for Poch to kick off the Chelsea era. That 1 win was against Luton Town, with Villa and Brighton to come.
Yeah, we'll see how those go. Okay.
Do you see it getting any better, by the way?
Yes, I think it will. XG is useless to use in individual games, but over the course of the season, it tends to sort of work its way out. Chelsea are better than the 5 goals they've scored. They have to find a way. We've got a lot of players who are going to come back from injury, who are going to make the squad better and deeper. And they were desperately unlucky with the Raheem Sterling moment. So I do see it getting better, but I don't think this team are going to be much better. I'm not one of these delusional fans who thinks this is a top 4 team. I think they should be aiming to get top half of the table. That would be an achievement for this team this season. Burley would hate to hear me say that, but that's what I think would be the achievement.
I am rooting for Poch. Now, can I interest you in a new insurance policy?
Okay, before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers this week, powered by Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy, and it is a lot going on at Men in Blazers HQ. A reminder about Early Kickoff, the new daily podcast from Men in Blazers Media Network. Go and subscribe to that now. It's on a separate feed from this one, so go and search Men in Blazers Early Kickoff and smash that subscribe button. We should also note, Rog, along with the return of the Champions League this week comes the return of European Nights with Rory Smith. The first episode of that will drop tomorrow on this podcast feed. Will Christian Pulisic play for AC Milan midweek? We'll see, Rog. You're going to be taking the football don't sleep thing a little too literally yet again. So give us a toast and then grab a nap.
I want to end the pod by raising a shot of Jägermeister, this bolt of human emotion in a shot glass to US men's national team. Number 9's first league goals with new clubs for Flo Balogun, Ricardo Pepi and Pifok. these are incredible days we are living in which our best are sharpening their skills against the best. One in which fans can agonize in a really wonderfully fractious debate about who should be our real starter, a debate which has honestly no clear answer right now, but in the best of ways, may that long continue to more of these incredible days in which steel is sharpening steel. Courage.
Excellent. I heard Balogun referred to by a US commentator as a cheat code, Rog. I hope that comes true.
That's how Chelsea fans talked about Rom Lukaku for the first 5 games.
Yeah, after his first game. Yes. Yeah, it's very true. You can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies, at Rog Bennett, on Instagram at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies, on Facebook Men in Blazers, twitch.tv/Men in Blazers, also at TikTok. Look for it at Men in Blazers. You can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com. We love and cherish getting your emails. Venderpunk, Rog.
Warpig.
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Balls win.
Take that, Gloria.
Balls lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight in America. Love you, Davo.
Love you, Rog.
Love you, my footballing monastery. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos. And courage.